Hi, my name is Julie. I'm an engineer at Microsoft, and welcome to my too long didn't read video about Terraform and Azure Pipelines best practices. Like all my videos, this is going to be about world-class engineering in real life, no hello worlds. So check it out if you want to skip some beginner's mistakes, but please read the entire article, which explains in much more detail and looking at source code, the reasoning behind these recommendations. And don't forget to like this video, comment with feedback, ask questions, and subscribe for more. So the first tip is to use YAML pipelines, not the classic UI-driven pipelines. Those are legacy from Team Foundation server. What you want to do is use pipelines as code. That's industry standard, that's industry trend. And in Azure DevOps, that's Azure Pipelines. Use YAML. So the second tip is to use Terraform on the command line, not the YAML task. The YAML tasks look simpler at first glance, but over time, they end up being just yet another abstraction layer that you have to debug. More importantly, I want you to master technology. I want you to master Terraform. I want you to master Git on the command line, not a YAML task. To really understand the consequences of what you're doing and how to scale, right? Not just across multiple teams, but also over multiple environments, you need to understand Terraform very well, and you do that best by using the command line, not a YAML task. Okay, tip number 3, use Terraform partial configuration. When you're starting out, you're reading the documentation and you find an example, it looks really easy to read. However, it is including the storage account name, the file name, but also the access key and the SAS token. And if you keep reading to the end of the documentation, you'll see that it's supposed to look like this: empty, partial configuration. All that data that is specific to you is actually stored somewhere else. So on my local machine, I use a file. I call it azure.conf. Okay, I do not use TF-vars, which are automatically loaded. That's a security issue waiting to happen. I use conf as an extension to tell my brain that's a config file with credentials. Be careful. Make sure it's in git ignore, which mine is. When I'm in a pipeline, I don't load a secure file. What I do instead is pass each one of those parameters as a secret via the backend config property to the Terraform command line. It makes it very easy to follow where is something coming from and where is it going. Makes debugging super easy. And this explicit step is not a bad thing. That's why if you use variables set as secrets in Azure Pipelines, you have to explicitly map those to the environment. So I recommend going a step further and not just using pipeline secrets, but also integrating Azure Key Vault. So number 4, how do you authenticate to the Azure Resource Manager API if you're not using the task and a service connection? Easy. You're just going to set the client ID and the client secret of the service principal into your environment as environment variables. You might think, is that safe? Yes. If you were to look into the source code of the official task, the one for the Azure CLI, it's doing just that. Go look in the Terraform documentation. That's what they recommend. Set those values into the environment. Okay. Final tip, create a custom role for Terraform. You're using Terraform to create and manage infrastructure, which is the foundational layer for your cloud workload. And in this layer, you also probably want to add a certain number of protections. To do that, a contributor role is not enough. To look at what contributors can do, we can run this Azure CLI command. Now, if we look at it, there are 2 things that are interesting. The Microsoft authorizations, which you'll see there's a write and there's a delete. We want to give it the right permission so that it can, for example, create an Azure Key Vault access policy. What some people will do is say, oh, I can't do that with contributor. I'm just going to give it owner rights. That's God mode. You don't want to do that. And another use case that will happen is that if you work for a compliant industry, where I come from, then certain things you cannot delete for legal reasons. And to do that, you apply a management lock on the ARM side that actually can prevent it from being deleted. However, to make sure that that actually has an effect, you have to make sure that your Terraform service principal cannot remove that lock, right? We want to ensure that a human can, that only human can do that. So make sure Terraform cannot do it. Create a custom role just for Terraform. So there you have it, 5 best practices and tips to help you get started using Terraform with Azure Pipelines like a pro. Subscribe to this channel because I'm going to add some more content. If you like it, definitely read the whole article. It's really, really long, but it explains everything in detail much better than I can on camera like that. So Read it, check it out, subscribe, and see you soon.